back to the Candy Kinkdom with Lace and Misty. The Candy Kinkdom is a podcast for littles and bigs, where we provide resources and support and a safe space to learn together. So sit back, grab your sippy, stuffy and passy, and let's play!
Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Candy Kinkdom podcast. We're your hosts Lace and
Misty. What is the Candy Kinkdom? Well, the Candy Kinkdom is a health and sexuality podcast whose aim is to educate and support those within the CGL, that's caregiver and little community, provide resources and information to those just discovering it, and decrease the stigma about this different but healthy relationship style, all while having a fun chat with two people actively involved in this lifestyle. So we're really excited to be here, and we hope that you guys enjoy this podcast and get something out of it. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, so I guess we'll start by telling you a little bit about ourselves. So this is Misty speaking. I'm a little in my mid-20s. I discovered my little side about a year ago, but I've been involved in kink for about 5 years. I had no idea about caregivers, littles, or any of that kind of side until I kind of was exposed through it slowly on Tumblr in a very judgmental way.
That's everybody's experience is being exposed to it through Tumblr.
Yeah, true. Tumblr is like where it's at. Before they banned all the porn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had it. My first exposure to it was through a bunch of vanillas who were like so judgmental about it and just being like, "What is this?" and making fun of people. Oh, do you know what it was actually? It was people reblogging like totally innocent posts, but doing like weird role play underneath it.
Oh, what?
So that like was where the judgment came from, because people were just like, can you guys do this somewhere else? Like, why are you doing this? Oh, daddy, whatever. Like on a post about like, it would be like Pokemon or just something totally random where these like CGL couples, I'm assuming, would just freaking be role playing underneath it. And of course, that's why I was judgmental, because I was like, what the hell? Like, this is so out of context. But anyway, then I met another little through Tumblr and through a kink group that we were in together, and we just got to chatting, and I was like, oh, well, I've always had little tendencies. Like, one of my favorite quotes I remember growing up, and something that my family still asks me every now and then, is like, when are you going to stop watching cartoons? And I'm always like, never, because I love cartoons. And yeah, so I kind of learned more about it, and now I'm fully into it, obviously. And that's me. That's my little origin story.
Oh, well. So this is Lace, the slightly snuffly version of Lace today. I found kink after being in a relationship where it was 100% a CGL situation, but I didn't know at the time.
Ooh.
And I didn't know what CGL was. And then after it ended, I wanted to do some research just to understand what actually had happened, because there was some stuff that I liked, but there was some stuff I didn't, and some stuff that I didn't really understand. And it started with he just wanted to be called daddy, and I was like, actually it started where he was like, oh, it's so gross, I could never. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, fair enough, that's your opinion, each to their own. I was practicing inclusivity, and I didn't want to badmouth something I didn't understand. And then I was like, he kept bringing it up, and I'm like, for somebody who doesn't like a thing, you really like to fixate on this thing, you know?
That's so funny.
I feel like that's probably not what you actually think and feel about the situation. So I kind of was like, well, I just dropped it in conversation once and he nearly had a panic attack. It was the
Oh
best
my
thing ever.
God.
Yeah, and so that's how that started. And look, it was a really unhealthy relationship in lots of ways because I had no idea what I was doing and I didn't understand the rules or the etiquette or the expectations around consent and negotiation and all of those things. I didn't have a podcast like this to listen to learn. So I looked into it and it turns out there's a lot I didn't know. But I was immediately reassured that actually what I experienced is really common and it's really a problem, I think, particularly for new littles, that I don't get any understanding because BDSM feels so far removed from the CGL experience. So when you look up BDSM stuff, you're like, well, that's absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you don't think that that's an actual resource, which it totally is. So for me, I kind of haphazardly stumbled across stuff on Tumblr, just like you, and kind of started talking to people and getting involved in the local community on like FetLife and things. And it really became apparent to me that this is a lifestyle that, number one, I completely feel comfortable and at home with. But number two, I need to do a shitload of research about. So that's how it all came about for me. And that was, I think, maybe 7 years ago now, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you kind of went the opposite way that I did. Like, you found CGL first and then kind of was like, this is attached to, like, a BDSM.
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, BDSM, woo, dominance and submission, and what the heck is going on over there with this person saying daddy?
Why are there children here? This is illegal.
Right? Oh, God. Whole nother topic.
So it's interesting because I think a lot of people need to get past that. Like, they think about the minors situation and they assimilate it, and they automatically conflate, CGL with pedophilia, which is totally understandable for those that haven't given it 2 seconds of thought to think maybe there are reasonable people in this community. But I understand that. But I actually went straight to the CGL, and I was always like, oh no, this makes total sense to me. No, this is clearly not a kid thing. This is a dynamic. I knew what a dynamic was before I knew the language for it.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
I guess you're right. Like, I went into it feeling, whereas you went into it thinking. Which is typical, I think.
I mean, like, you discovered it after or in the middle of a not so great relationship, whereas I discovered it right before starting a not so great relationship.
And that's what we have in common, is not so great relationships.
So no, there you have it.
I don't think it was necessarily a not so great relationship. It's just it was I was uneducated, and I think he was not in a great place either. So obviously I don't hold it against him. He's really happy in a relationship with someone now. I don't know if it's in dynamic, but it's none of my business, and I just wish him the best. And if I hadn't had that introduction, it might have taken me longer to get to this lifestyle.
That's so true. It brought you something good. You're so mature, because I'm like, I hope my ex trips and twists his ankle. I don't know.
Oh, dear.
It's still raw. It's been 2 years. It's fine.
It's too soon. It's too soon for me.
All right. So now that we've kind of covered who we are, I guess we should talk about, like, what CGL actually is, now that we've gone on a rant about it. Oh, hey, dog. Yeah. Can you leave? Go away. She's just like, I will lick you now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I guess CGL is shorthand for Caregiver Little, like we said before, and it encompasses so many different acronyms. The most, I think it started out as DDLG, which is Dominant Daddy Little Girl, but obviously that's not
I always thought it was Daddy Dom. There you go.
Ah, maybe it is.
I don't know. No, but probably not. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe, I think that sounds kind of right. Daddy Dom. Whatever. It's those two words in some kind of order. And obviously that's not very inclusive, because there's little boys and there's mommies and all of that. So
and non-binary people.
Oh, yes. I've totally forgot about that. Thank you. You're so good at being inclusive. And that's something we always want to, like, do. That's one of our biggest aims as well.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to leave anyone out of the community. So
100%. That's right.
And if we ever do stuff up, I'm trying to keep it PG. Could have dropped an F-bomb just then, but I decided not to.
I was proud of you. I was waiting for the sound effect. I really was.
So yeah, if we stuff up, just let us know and we'll do our best to get educated and fix it.
Yes. And this is an educational space, not just for anybody listening, but also for us. You know, there's a lot I don't know. And,
my gosh,
and
so
it's
much.
like that with everything in life. You think you know things, and then the more you learn, the more you know you don't know. And I'm always looking to add to my inclusivity. You know, there's lots of ways in which I am privileged, and there's lots of ways in which I'm a minority. And I do believe there is an intersection of
so much.
Oppression and privilege, and you can have both. And I definitely have both. And so I am always looking to understand and be open to other people. So if we are caught being, you know, exclusive, or we are gendering people when we shouldn't be, or if we are not using the right terminology, or we're using the terminology out of place, flick us an email. We're thecandykinkdom@gmail.com. Please, you know, point it out. Tell us so that we can fix our shit.
You don't have to be nice about it either. You can totally just be like, hey, you guys are kind of assholes, by the way. You're like, oh, okay, sorry, didn't know. Okay, good to know now. We're not too sensitive about, like, criticism. We're pretty open to it.
Oh, no, like, I'm really sensitive about criticism. I will cry in a corner, but that's a part of my cathartic process and dealing with things.
Well, do you know how I know I'm good at receiving constructive criticism? My therapist told me that, so, you know.
Oh, well, there you go.
I have to go to therapy. Okay, yeah, you should totally take advice from these two crackpots. We're chatting right now. Totally. Anyway, back to defining CGL. So it is it started out as a subset of BDSM. I think it's kind of gone on its own little path, because there is lots of people who practice CGL who don't necessarily identify as being part of BDSM. Like, it's still kink to me, which is why it's not for minors. But it's just, some people are like, oh, you know, I don't really do, like, I guess, the traditional power exchange of dominance and submission while they're in that CGL space, which is totally fine, and something that I had just learned from a kick group that we run. Like, we had a member that was in there that was saying, you know, I'm a little, but I don't, like, my caregiver isn't my dom, and I don't submit to him. And I was like, wait, how does that work? And I'm still always trying to, like, pick her brain to figure out what the heck is going on. And I'm like, so wait, you don't have rules? And she's like, no, I just have, like, suggestions, and it's up to me if I do them or not. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, so anyway,
that wouldn't be
always
enough
learning.
For me. I couldn't.
Nah.
I need the structure.
I would not do any of it. I would just be like, you suggest that I do this? I suggest that my answer is no. Like, I'm not doing it.
But I guess that just highlights why kink is so different for different people, and that's why you have to be super inclusive, because it means something completely different for us to what it means to them in some ways, and then in some ways it's exactly the same. So, you know, that's why you have to always be inclusive, because you don't know what it means to somebody, and it can be the world to one person, a lifer, and then another person it can be just something they do for funsies and to relax and to get a bit of downtime.
I like that term, a lifer.
Yes, I stole that from the local overseeing person in the community here, the BDSM community here.
Nice.
Anyway,
very
I
nice.
love it.
And I think the other part about, like, being inclusive or just kind of being open to people's interpretations is that, you know, someone who's, like, just figuring it out for themselves, they can go, you know, I don't tick all of these boxes, and you don't have to. Like, you can just pick and choose. It's a buffet. A glorious buffet.
That being said, though, there are, I think, some basic things that have to be covered
True.
to keep it legit.
Definable.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just be...
Can't just be all willy-nilly.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for me, the big thing is no minors as a point of absolute
like there
focus.
is just no...
You just cannot... Yeah.
Wiggle room.
There's no leeway
I do not care.
Yeah.
I'm almost 18. All right, buddy. Come back.
See you when you're 18.
Yeah. Right.
And not only that, I also think that it needs to be safe and sane and consensual at all points. And I do practice risk-aware kink and BDSM and SSC and all of those acronyms, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later on down the path. But if a person isn't in a position to legally consent to what they're doing, and of course there is the whole you cannot consent to abuse, and I think that's where the legal system kind of draws a line with kink and why a lot of it can come undone. But for me, it's definitely about if you can't consent legally to smoking a cigarette or voting or drinking alcohol, you cannot consent to kink.
Yeah, or going to war or something crazy. Your points are more valid, honestly. I shouldn't have brought up war. I'm so sorry. But while we're at it, capitalism sucks and war is just another cog in the engine of the evil machine that is capitalism. Can you edit all of that part out so that we don't get flagged?
I'm not going to. Okay, so this is a kink socialist space.
I'm so sorry, guys. It got a bit too real in
really
here.
Good in theory.
It got so real in here for a second. Anyway, so yes, we were defining CGL 20 minutes ago.
One thing I think we should do is define the parallels between CGL and BDSM, because it's a big grey area for a lot of people who are in traditional BDSM, as I like to call it, and who don't recognise CGL as an important part of that. And I think when you're talking about BDSM, it's, you're doing these things that trigger the endorphin response and the serotonin response. You want to get that feel-good chemical of doing something yummy. And some people get it through the physical thing of the flogging, and some people get it through rope and edge play and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think where CGL is a really good parallel is those who like the dominance of submission for the mental aspect of it, the mental aspect of having somebody, take away the decisions and make them do, be under their power, and have a dominant that you trust who's going to get you to do things that are going to help you grow in lots of different ways. And that's what all dominants do in the end. It's not about being weak and having all the power. It's about helping a submissive grow and reach a place of those chemicals that, the feel-good yummies, but also sustainable change to become the person they want to be. And that for me is exactly what CGL is. It's just done in a different way. It's slightly less of the edge play and a lot more of a cute, sort of gentle, caring, supportive role, which has lots of elements, and sometimes they're sexual and sometimes they're not. But at for me, that's where the parallel is. It's more of like a mental BDSM than a physical one.
I like that. And obviously there are still the physical elements, with discipline and all of that, if you choose to incorporate that into your relationship, which is also part of traditional, BDSM.
Absolutely.
There's usually the discipline if someone's not, usually the submissive or the little, is not holding up their end of the bargain. And yes, CGL doesn't just kind of sprout from the ground. You have to do that communication. You have to do that negotiation that happens in BDSM as well. And the vetting, another topic. The vetting is so important, and honestly a space where I feel like real talk, littles, we're not very good at it sometimes. So that is why that's going to be a whole other episode on its own, because we need to do better and keep ourselves safer.
Yes. And I think littles tend to find themselves in a position where they get taken advantage of, and the same with bigs as well. But I think in a
different way.
And from the platform that I'm on as somebody who's in the little space, that's my focus, is not necessarily how bigs can protect themselves, even though that is something that I'm always focusing on, I definitely believe that bigs need more aftercare. I definitely think that bigs need more opportunity.
Consideration.
Yeah. And also to pay attention to things like top drop, just not get anywhere near, like the mental stability of bigs is never really brought into, well, I won't say never, but I think a lot of the time it's dismissed because it's always the focus is on the little. Yeah. Whereas I think the little definitely always needs to be a little bit bigger sometimes for their bigs.
A little bit bigger. Love it.
A little bit bigger.
And the other thing that I want to say is, like, dominants are, they want to be in control. They want to be the leader, basically. And I feel like it's still the same with a caregiver. They want to be the leader, but in a different way, like a leader who nurtures, and a leader who can be silly sometimes with their person. And that's more of the mental side of it. I think they get those yummy feelings from being able to, like, have those protective and caring feelings brought out in them. So,
absolutely. Definitely. And I think they need a soft, safe space to be able to do that, because I think the CGL relationship is not just for the littles, it's also for the C's.
Yes.
And they get as much from it as we do, and we always forget that. And I know that I think a big common trait of littles is an insecurity thing. And I'm not saying that all littles are insecure, it's just that I see that so much. And I wish it wasn't the case, definitely, but it really can be. And I think we're really quick to forget that the caregivers get a lot out of this too. If they're good and they were vetted properly and they're well behaved and they're actually not fake daddies.
Yes. Another topic, guys. So many topics. But I think I can kind of, like, I just thought of an analogy. Like, it's probably not the most appropriate, but, I've got a dog, and, like, when I'm taking care of her, I'm not thinking of it like, I have to do all of these things for her. Like, I'm happy when I give her stuff, or when she feels safe, and, like, I guess it's a big deal for me because she is a rescue as well, but, like, all of those things when I'm building her confidence and doing all of those things, they're fulfilling for me as well. So I think you can kind of think of it from that point of view as well, as a little who's like, I don't know what they're getting out of this.
And I think that I think a lot of the reasons, the parallels with caregiver, is that it automatically goes to parental titles, is if you think about a person who just selflessly gives themselves to the growth of somebody who's under their support and mentorship, it's the parent-child relationship. So I think that's why the terminology was pulled from that place. But then again, there are a lot of people who, intentionally stray away from that terminology because they don't feel comfortable with the connotations. So I think that kind of is a part of, because a lot of people ask, why do you use that terminology? Because it's so weird. Why couldn't you use something else? And it's like, well, I guess it just feels like, that's the person that I look up to. Well, not necessarily myself, but in society. And it just, I don't know, I struggle to define that, but I think part of it is to do with, is the fact that you are looking up to a person and they're going to help you learn how to reach the goals that you have and do it in a way that is safe and sane, and that they're looking over all of these aspects of your personality and going, right, so how can we synthesize all of this and help you grow using your strengths and understanding your weaknesses and all that sort of thing. And it just seems like the kind of a thing I think a parent does for their actual child.
Yes. So, and then there's also the taboo aspect, which makes it kind of hot for some of us.
Well, there is also that, and that comes back to the endorphins and the thrill and the excitement of it, which is why aftercare is so important, because you're essentially coming down from a drug-induced high, but it's natural and non-synthetic. And so you're going to drop from that, and you're going to need somebody there who's going to catch you. So, the caregiver relationship is really special and important, and this is why I think caregivers do not get given anywhere near enough attention for their mental spaces, because they're dealing with a lot, and they're facilitating a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. So we basically skimmed across a bunch of future topics. We're open to suggestions at that same email that Lace mentioned earlier.
thecandykinkdom@gmail.com.
Awesome. And I really like this because you can kind of tell who's talking, I reckon, because I don't have an Australian accent. So I get really frustrated when I'm listening to like podcasts with two females because I'm like, what the heck? Who is talking right now? So there you go.
No,
we did it on purpose.
It's really clear. I'm the one who's perpetually a little bit sick, and you're the one who's like foreign.
So foreign. Anyway, but we're both in Australia because it's like super cool.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I guess we should, yeah. What were you
Oh, well,
say?
I was going to just say, like, what things are you looking to get out of this podcast for yourself, Misty?
I think it's going to be a really good outlet for me. And I also do enjoy ranting. So you heard me on the phone when I was like stuck in traffic. Like I can go off. And I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that needs to be kind of said. Lots of like things that I just feel like aren't addressed enough. Like I said, with like Littles being kind of crappy at vetting, yeah, like some of that stuff, and just giving a voice to some of the Littles that aren't so popular, I guess, as well as something important for me, and just a way to give back to the community that I get so much out of, as cliche as it sounds. Like, I just like doing that kind of stuff. I'm not the type of person who's just going to take, you know what I mean?
Absolutely understand. Yep, I feel the same
What
way.
about you?
So I think what I would love is that when I very, very first started getting seriously into kink, I read this amazing book called Playing Well with Others, and I will leave the link for this in the description wherever the below is on whichever platform. And it basically
we'll have show notes.
Yeah. It was a very dry piece of text in some ways about this is what a play party is. This is what you should expect. This is what you'll feel. This is what you'll see. This is what you need to do. And this is what you don't do.
That kind of sounds really good.
Oh, it's such a good book. And it does this over like every topic of kink you can possibly imagine.
Wow.
And it also helps you to understand emotional context for kink and how to take care of yourself, take care of others, and to play in this space in a way that is inclusive, and it's great. But I felt that it was very BDSM focused, and that's fine because that was the context and the intention of the book. Whereas I would love for something a little bit more little focused, because every time you look up books or anything about Little Space, it's always just a mess of terrible quotes and like I think I would love for something a little bit little focused, written by some littles and caregivers that are going to actually, you know, go over the basis
experience
of things. Yeah, exactly. And there was another book I read called Conquer Me, which I will also put in the show notes, which is written actually by a sub, and it's amazing. It talks about a lot of conditions that littles and subtypes go through. It was really eye-opening for me, but again, more focused on DS rather than CGL. So I really want to kind of help with a resource and something that people who are either, you know, in a situation with their CG where they can't really explain what they're feeling, but they're damn feeling it. They want to say, here, listen to this, and then you'll understand what I'm trying to say. But also a CGL to say, hey, listen to this and tell me what you think. Or sorry, CG, sorry, not CGL. But yeah, I'm super looking forward to some of the topics which we're going to touch on, like, you know, looking at etiquette in public spaces.
Oh, yes, such a good one.
Vetting caregivers, vetting littles,
so
types
important.
of CGL relationships. We're going to have some fun segments like what's in my lunchbox. And
I'm looking forward to that. It's a cupcake.
We were also thinking of, well, we've already got a Patreon, and in that Patreon we will have some extra content, lots of Misty's rantings. We can do live AMA for people. We're going to do lots of color me sections, crafting, talking through some tasks with people, and unboxings and hauls and all that kind of thing. So we have so much in store, which we really hope you guys will want to stick around for the ride for.
Yes. Well, like we said, we are on all the social media.
Yes.
Luckily enough, because we're kind of obsessive, we have just, our handle on everything is the Candy Kinkdom. So the same name as the podcast. And we are on Tumblr, SoundCloud, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Patreon, and the emails as well. So
I think the only thing we don't have is a Facebook, and I kind of like it that way.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook isn't even in now. Like, we're not 40, so
No.
that's an awful thing to say. I'm so sorry, 40-year-old. Edit that out. Edit it out.
Misty, we just have to have a conversation about your rampant ageism, because that's just
so bad.
Completely inappropriate, and I'm going to put you on blast.
People.
Speaking of putting on blast, there is one I suppose contentious topic that I'm really keen on, and so is Misty, and that will be the fake DOMs and the crap messages they send us on FetLife.
I'm so excited. I have so many.
It's just, it happens a lot, and it's time to shame these
children
for their behavior.
I got 3 messages from the same person in 24 hours. Like, not like he just kept sending it in the same thread, but he just started a new message every time. And it's like not even like I'm just like being rude. I was gonna respond, but just the increasing pressure. Now I'm like, get out of here. He didn't say anything rude. It was just a lot.
I think we're gonna call this segment the Dodgy Dom.
Dodgy ads. Gotta put the Australian. We're spreading Australian lingo.
Yes, the Dodgy Dom, the DOMs you need to dodge.
Love it.
So, Misty, why don't you tell us the things your Dodgy Dom said to you?
Oh, goodness. You put me on the spot. And I don't think it's, like, appropriate for this because it honestly had some seriously interesting things in it. Oh, no, I blocked him. Oh, what can I do? Can I look in my archive? Oh, yes, here we go. Here we go. Well, why hello there? And then he's put a chocolate bar because obviously, what else can I say to someone with a complexion that's different to mine? Oh, I'll put a chocolate bar there. Mm-hmm. Baby girl. And then he's put a winky face, a peach, and like that wet looking emoji.
Which is disgusting and skeevy on its own.
And then he's gone, how are you and that tight little lady part today? I told you I don't think it's appropriate, other than dying to be filled and bred with male, what's it, emissions? And okay. I've just gone, did you come up with that all on your own, or did you have to Google stuff I should say to a woman to compensate for my lackluster personality and insecure masculinity? One does wonder. It's really fun to throw big words in there because I'm like, they probably don't understand them.
I love that clapback. That's so just classy. To the DOMs who are listening, don't accost people with the kind of text messages you wouldn't feel comfortable reading aloud to your parents.
Yes,
it's not okay.
Such a good guideline. Unless they consent into it, like the person,
Exactly. And the thing is, people don't consent to being accosted in that way. Nobody does. So don't do it. Otherwise, you're going to end up on this segment.
And we're going to laugh at you.
Yeah, we're going to laugh mercilessly.
All right. Well, that ended up going for a lot longer than I thought. I'm not surprised, though, because we are chatty. We like to have a chat.
As they say, we are chatty Cathys.
We are. But we just want to say thank you if you've made it till the end. And we are going to refer to our listeners as Candy People because that is part of why we chose this podcast name, because I like that. And you guys are just going to have to deal with it.
And because they're so sweet.
Aw, that's cute. Oh, you're always coming in clutch with the like actual nice things. I'm just like, this is what's happening, and you're gonna deal with it. Oh my God, maybe I'm a caregiver in disguise.
You're the Dom, and I'm the CD, 100%.
So if you liked what you heard and want to stay up to date with episodes, like please subscribe and review to help us add to our Candy crew, and follow us on all of those social media accounts, and we'll be following back. And yeah, so thanks guys for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and we will catch y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.